Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, we're going to be talking about in this particular broadcast some of the things that are taking place with the U.S. defense budget. Now, we know every year they put that together, and it just seems to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. Right. This time, it's at record numbers. But not only that, who's going to run Gaza? They've been talking about the restructuring of Gaza since the end of the conflict there, supposedly, between Israel and Gaza Strip. We're going to see what's going to take place with that. And we're going to talk a little bit about the strikes. There's been some strikes from the United States in Syria once again. Now, they've done that before. Well, why did they do it this time? What's going to start us off first with over the last 5 years, as many of you have probably known and experienced for yourself, food prices have soared to record highs. Well, with food being a staple for everyone, coupled with all the other increased costs of living, well, some have resorted to stealing from grocery stores to make ends meet. Well, one owner of a chain of 28 grocery stores in New York City said that theft used to account for 1.5% of store sales. Now, that number is 7 to 10%. He said since the start of COVID, things just started getting worse and worse.
Well, some of the most commonly stolen items are over-the-counter medicines, detergents, and prepackaged meats and cheeses. In other words, high-ticket items that are small enough to fit in shopping bags and walked right out of the stores, particularly through the self-checkout lanes, where 27% of shoppers admitted to stealing through the checkout lane. Now, of those shoplifters, 46% blamed unaffordability and tariffs.
Wow. Well, Lending Tree analyst Matt Schultz said that people are really struggling and they're looking for ways to deal with high prices.
Well, Washington has just approved the latest defense budget, this one being the highest in U.S. and the world's history. Now, take a look at just how much it is and where the money is going.
Our next story takes us to the United States. Washington has just approved a massive defense budget. It is close to $1 trillion. This is the biggest military budget in American history, or in the world for that matter. It locks in President Donald Trump's priorities, like more money for weapons and the U.S. military at home. But the American Congress has also drawn red lines. There are limits to what the president can do. Plus, Europe is guaranteed the support of U.S. troops. Ukraine will get $800 million in weapons aid. China will face new scrutiny on tech investments. Taiwan will get $1 billion for military cooperation. Israel's missile defense systems will get full funding. And Trump's military operations near Venezuela are under scrutiny. So this is not just a budget. It's a blueprint for U.S. power in the year ahead. Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump has signed a defense law that will shape America's power for the next year. It is the single most important military decision Washington makes annually. This is called the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. This year, it comes with a record price tag: $901 billion. More than any defense bill before it, and more than what the White House itself requested. Congress passed it with overwhelming support. At home, it focuses on the military itself. U.S. service members will receive a nearly 4% pay rise. The Pentagon will move ahead with new ships, aircraft, and missile systems. Funding for the Trump's Golden Dome missile defense project is also written into law. The bill reflects the political priorities of President Trump. Diversity and inclusion programs at the Pentagon have been shut down, and transgender women are barred from women's sports at military academies. Beyond America's borders, the bill sends even stronger signals. Europe sits at the center of it. Despite Trump's skepticism of NATO, Congress has drawn clear limits. US troop numbers in Europe cannot fall below 76,000. Major equipment cannot be pulled out quickly. Support for NATO's eastern flank is reinforced. Special focus has gone to the Baltic states. Ukraine is also locked in. The Congress has approved $400 million a year for 2 years. The money will fund weapons production through US companies. It guarantees continued military support. Even as political debates continue elsewhere, the next major focus of the bill is on China. Washington is tightening scrutiny of American money flowing into sensitive Chinese technologies. US companies must now notify the Treasury Department when investing in high-risk sectors. These include semiconductors and quantum systems. Federal financing for some Chinese biotech firms is restricted. US diplomats will also expand monitoring of Beijing's global influence. That attention does not stop at China's borders. The bill fully funds the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative, worth $1 billion. It authorizes continued US military training for Taiwanese forces. Meanwhile, limits have been placed on reducing US troop levels in South Korea. In West Asia, there's a symbolic break with the past. It repeals the legal authorizations behind the Iraq wars. Those powers had been in place for decades. Congress is reclaiming its role in decisions of war. The law also lifts sanctions imposed on Syria in 2019. The stated aim is to support post-war reconstruction. The bill provides full funding for Israel's missile defense systems. That includes Iron Dome and David's Sling. In America's neighborhood, active duty troops have been authorized at the US-Mexico border. And congressional oversight of recent military operations in the Caribbean has also been tightened. So what does this all add up to? This defense law locks in America's military priorities for the year ahead. Congress has drawn red lines that Trump cannot cross. The message to allies is clear. US commitments will hold. And to rivals, Washington is watching them closer than ever before.
Well, the U.S. is really, making moves to kind of diversify where all that money is going for the defense budget, as all these different places the U.S. kind of has a foot in those areas. But it seems like that money would be better spent helping to supplement people, as we just talked about, and being able to afford the necessities of life like eating.
Right, and Congress, as you saw there, didn't have any problem approving it right away. So the defense budget is something that usually gets passed and, as you said, still gets higher and higher each year.
That's right. On this next report, since the Gaza ceasefire, the U.S. President Donald Trump presented his plan for the troublesome area, a plan that has some in the international community excited and others protesting the idea. Well, let's take a look.
I'm delighted to welcome
with the Israeli Prime Minister grinning by his side, U.S. President Donald Trump made a shocking announcement. Contrary to initial plans, Phase 3 of the Gaza ceasefire, reconstruction, is unlikely. Instead, Trump envisions something different.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, will own it, and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site. I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see at bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East.
The forced displacement of a population by an occupying power, Israel, violates international law. Trump reiterated his call for Egypt and Jordan to take in the 2 million displaced Palestinians, a plan both countries have rejected. Still, Trump believes he'll convince Arab nations to sign on to his vision for Gaza, ideas Benjamin Netanyahu also endorses.
President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so much terrorism. I think it's something that could change history.
Trump referred to Gaza repeatedly as hell and a demolition site, but he believes it can be transformed.
I envision a world, people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there, Palestinians also. I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East.
And in the midst of a fragile ceasefire, Trump made yet another controversial remark about Palestinian sovereignty over the West Bank and whether the U.S. supports annexing it.
We haven't taken a position on it yet, but we'll be making an announcement probably on that very specific topic over the next 4 weeks.
On Wednesday, the Israeli Prime Minister meets with the U.S. National Security Advisor and Defense Secretary at the Pentagon. And he wraps up his visit to the United States on Capitol Hill, meeting with senior congressional leaders.
Well, the Riviera of the Middle East, which, you know, he's wanting to make it full of resorts and just a very fancy place. But as we've talked about, this is the home to millions of people there that are now going to be pushed out. Yeah. And as Trump is wanting these other countries in the region to take in all these displaced people, they said, no, we're not doing it. So, you know, that's going to be a real push on his end to accomplish that, if it's even possible.
Yeah, and I would think the people in those areas, the people who've called Gaza Strip home for many, probably generations, you know, they're probably not liking the idea of being uprooted and forced out of their homes, not knowing where to go or what lies ahead of them.
Right, but President Benjamin Netanyahu seemed to be all smiles and was, you know, liking the idea that President Trump had.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a lot of dollar signs behind this, whatever might be.
Well, a little closer to home, just south of the U.S., President Trump has issued a blockade on oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela, which sent oil prices up. Now, President Nicolas Maduro has accused the U.S. of trying to take over his country's resources. Now, the country depends on its oil exports, and it has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Now, the U.S. is Venezuela's second largest buyer of its crude oil after China. Now, Trump has staked claims to areas where the U.S. had oil companies in the country pumping the crude and blamed Venezuela for taking, quote, our oil away from us. And he said, we want it back.
Wow. President Maduro said that he won't let the United States take what belongs to Venezuela. In an address, Maduro said that he spoke with the UN Secretary General, and they spoke at length on how he laid out the scale and aggression and threats. And of course, when the government of the United States said that it, referring to the oil, belongs to them and the Venezuelans are stealing their oil, well, President Maduro said that Venezuela's oil belongs to us, the Venezuelans. Right. Well, Maduro continued, so Venezuela's oil belongs to them, meaning the U.S. The Venezuelan minerals and gold belong to them. And what we've never heard before, that the Venezuelan land belongs to them and that we must give them back immediately. Honestly, it's a warlike and colonial intention.
Well, in light of the war of words, a spokesman for the UN Secretary General also made a statement saying, Quote, what the Secretary General is focused on is avoiding any further escalation. The Secretary General calls for restraint and for the immediate de-escalation of the situation.
Well, adding, quote, he calls on all stakeholders to honor their obligations under international law, including the UN Charter and any other applicable legal framework to safeguard peace in the region. And of course, as always, he believes that any difference must be resolved by peaceful means, end quote. Well, it's pretty clear tensions are not de-escalating between the United States and Venezuelan president, and intervention is needed.
So the oil, the minerals, and now the land, he's saying, belongs to the U.S. That's that's going to be a big pill to swallow for the Venezuelans, and especially for President Nicolas Maduro. Well, moving now to the Far East, Japan has unveiled its plan to set up new military surveillance radar on one of its islands, and China is, of course, strongly protesting this move. Adding this to Japan's support for Taiwan to be independent has brought strong protests from Beijing. Please pay attention to learn the latest about the turmoil between China and Japan. Take a look.
Moving on to our next story now. China has issued a strong protest against Japan over Japan's plan to deploy a new military surveillance radar. According to reports, the radar is to be placed on a remote island in southern Japan. Beijing said the move threatens regional stability and described it as a dangerous military buildup. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Jiakun said Japan plans to deploy the radar on Kitadaito Island to strengthen surveillance near the Pacific. He said the system is intended to closely monitor Chinese naval vessels and aircraft operating in the region.
Due to Japanese militarists' history of aggression and other reasons, Japan's moves in military and security areas have been closely watched by its Asian neighbors and the international community. The Japanese side kept strengthening targeted military deployment near China's Taiwan region and even claimed it will deploy mid-range missiles. This time, it went even further by deploying radar unit and troops to secretly monitor its neighbor.
Well, according to reports, Japan also plans to station around 30 Air Force personnel on Kitadaito Island. Radar facilities are also planned to monitor movements through the Miyako Strait. Well, the strait is a key strategic waterway. It connects the East China Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Beijing has once again criticized recent remarks by Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. She had suggested that the Chinese blockade of Taiwan could justify joint action by Japan and the US. China said these comments raise serious concerns. It said the remarks, combined with military deployments, increases tensions.
Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. How to resolve the Taiwan issue is entirely China's own affair, and Japan has no right to interfere. We hereby urge the Japanese side to abide by the spirit of the 4 political documents between China and Japan, to genuinely reflect on its errors, and to extract the erroneous remarks made by Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. The dangerous trend of reviving Japanese militarism has put regional countries and peoples on high alert. Defending the post-war international order, human conscience and justice serves the common interest of all sides and is a must choice.
Well, you know, China's been at odds for a very long time with any country wanting to give any type of military aid to Taiwan, as they have made it pretty clear many, many times that Taiwan belongs to China.
Right, and these moves, although some may look at them as little, they all add to the real big picture. And as you mentioned, China is just not pleased because they say we own Taiwan.
That's right. Well, now we turn to a very recent development in the Middle East, this time in Syria. The United States is carrying out a large military strike in an already war-torn Syria. Secretary of State Pete Hegseth, tweeted earlier today, U.S. forces commenced Operation Hawkeye Strike in Syria to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapon sites.
Well, the operation is a direct response to the attack on U.S. forces that occurred on December 13th in Palmyra, Syria. In that attack on the 13th, ISIS fighters ambushed 2 American soldiers, Sergeant William Howard and Sergeant Edgar Torres Tovar, and their U.S. civilian interpreter, Ayad Mansour Sakat. Now, all 3 were killed by a lone ISIS gunman. These combat deaths were the first since 2019, when Bashar al-Assad was removed from power.
Well, according to U.S. Central Command, the United States is using fighter jets, helicopters, and attack artillery, hitting dozens of targets. Now, the goal of Operation Hawkeye Strike is to hit hard what is left of ISIS infrastructure and eliminate their weapons. So the strikes are being carried out in the central part of the country on multiple targets.
Well, prior to this, there were 10 operations carried out by U.S. partners in the region. The U.S. gave support to these operations, which led to the capture and killing of 23 ISIS operatives. Now, that was the buildup to the current strikes that have just gotten underway.
Well, to end this evening, we focus on Turkey. What significance does the city of Iznik have that Pope Leo XIV would pay a visit to it on his first international trip as the Pope? Well, this next clip from Rome Reports explains. So please take a look.
The footage you see on screen is the main reason for Pope Leo XIV's first apostolic journey. Today it's Iznik, but 1700 years ago it was known as Nicaea. This is the place where the first ecumenical council ever was held. The pontiff traveled here by helicopter from Istanbul to celebrate an ecumenical prayer meeting. Around 20 church leaders, presidents, and secretaries of Christian communities from all around the world, both from the East and from the West, were present. The Patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew I, gave a welcoming speech in which he highlighted the shared sense of hope among Christians.
We are here to bear living witness to the same faith expressed by the fathers of Nicaea. We return to this wellspring of the Christian faith in order to move forward. We refresh ourselves at these inspired waters of rest in order to become strong for the tasks that lie ahead. The power of this place does not reside in what passes away, but in what endures forever.
Pope Leo XIV then took the floor and recalled one of the most important consequences of the Council of Nicaea, the birth of the Creed.
Faith in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, consubstantial with the Father, is a profound bond already uniting all Christians. In this sense, to quote St. Augustine, in the ecumenical context, we can also say that although we Christians are many, in the one Christ, we are one.
His words once again conveyed the message of the journey, which is none other than the message of unity.
We are all invited to overcome the scandal of the divisions that unfortunately still exist, to nurture the desire for unity for which the Lord Jesus prayed and gave his life. The more we are reconciled, the more we Christians can bear credible witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In this moving moment, the pontiff also made a call for peace and urged not to confuse religion with any form of fanaticism.
We must strongly reject the use of religion for justifying war, violence, or any form of fundamentalism or fanaticism. Instead, the paths to follow are those of fraternal encounter, dialogue, and cooperation.
After the speeches were done, everyone together recited the Creed, an image that has already become a historic and unique moment in Pope Leo XIV's first apostolic journey. And by doing so, Pope Leo XIV fulfilled Pope Francis's wish to celebrate the anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea.
Well, as we saw there, this is a very big event here for the Roman Catholic Church. 1,700 years celebrating the anniversary of the Council of Nicaea back in 325. And You know, as the Pope mentioned there, this is Pope Leo's, this is kind of, he's making his debut here and wanting to fill in for the previous Pope. But he mentioned there about unity, and that's actually the Council of Nicaea. What they tried to do in 325 was to unite, because there were so many divisions and factions and so forth that they said, you know what, we need to create a God that everybody can worship to bring in all Christianity and these other religions together. So they came up with Jesus Christ. Now, he didn't actually say it quite like that, but he said the creation of the creed.
Interesting. And that's been, I guess, in the world of Christianity, been known for a very long time, even with the rehearsal of the Nicene Creed very often. And this being the 1700th anniversary, I'm sure it has a lot of people wondering, well, what is to come now?
Well, if you want to learn what true unity is all about, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them by going to any of their websites at yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Israel program to aid you in your understanding and study of the Scriptures. You can find those programs by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thank you for watching.